January 16, 1991. Across the Persian Gulf, the desert air vibrated with energy the world had never felt before. For months, cameras had shown endless columns of American armor assembling in Saudi Arabia, a steel ocean forming silently beyond the Kuwaiti border. Diplomats had spoken, ultimatums had expired, and now, in the darkness of a winter night, the most technologically advanced military force in human history prepared to strike. It was called Operation Desert Storm, but to those who were about to witness it, it would feel less like a war and more like the awakening of a power the world had underestimated for too long. From underground command bunkers in Riyadh to carriers floating in the Persian Gulf, thousands of American service members watched synchronized countdown clocks edge toward zero. The order to execute came not as a shout, but as a whisper transmitted across satellites and secure networks that span continents. In Washington, President George H.W. Bush sat with his national security team, his words calm and measured. "We go tonight." In that instant, the full weight of American resolve, American technology, and American strategy converged into motion. Hundreds of aircraft, invisible to radar, lifted into the night sky. The world had seen large bombing campaigns before. World War II had burned cities. Vietnam had tested the limits of endurance. But this was something else entirely. Every jet, every missile, every maneuver was part of a symphony of precision never attempted on this scale. On the ground, pilots climbed into cockpits that glowed with green light from digital displays, flight helmets projecting targets miles away through computer-assisted vision. These were not just pilots. They were operators of machines so vast and interconnected that it seemed almost alive. As they ascended through the darkness, the sky filled with the thunder of jet engines, yet to radar operators in Baghdad, there was nothing. The first wave consisted of stealth aircraft, the F-117 Nighthawks, their angular shapes bending radar signals like ghosts. They flew at high altitude, slipping through rocky airspace unseen, their paths guided by satellites and computers thousands of miles away in the United States. Iraq's defenses were among the most heavily fortified in the world. Soviet-built radar systems, anti-aircraft batteries, and surface-to-air missiles ringed the capital like an iron halo. Yet within minutes, those systems began to die, one after another, their screens turning black. Pilots later described watching as the radar stations simply vanished, struck by precision-guided munitions that hit with mathematical perfection. The Iraqis never even saw the planes that destroyed them. The American concept of warfare had evolved beyond the imagination of those who believed mass and bravery alone could decide victory. This was war by computation, a storm guided by microchips and laser guidance, by surveillance satellites orbiting silently overhead. For the Iraqi generals huddled in their command centers, the first signs of attack were confusing. Communications dropped, radar went blind, and even power grids began to fail. To the civilians of Baghdad, the night seemed calm until the sky itself erupted. The first explosions were soundless flashes on the horizon. Then came the deep, rolling thunder of detonations that shook windows miles away. Buildings quivered, and the lights began to flicker, then die completely. Across the city, an ancient capital slipped into darkness. The phrase shock and awe would be coined years later, but its meaning was born that night. Journalists watching from hotel rooftops described the sky as a living thing. Streaks of fire arcing across blackness, each one a precision strike finding its mark. American aircraft struck power plants, communication nodes, command centers, and air defense sites in a sequence planned down to the second. It was not just an attack. It was a dismantling of an entire nation's ability to fight. For every Iraqi gun that fired into the night, dozens more were already destroyed or silent, their operators stunned by the speed and precision of the assault. In the U.S. Operations Center, massive screens displayed real-time feeds from reconnaissance satellites and AWACS radar planes. Commanders watched as green blips representing targets disappeared one by one. Decades of investment in technology, once criticized as excess, now revealed their purpose. The United States had built not only an army, but a networked instrument of global power, capable of striking anywhere on Earth with surgical accuracy. To the men and women in uniform, It was a vindication, a demonstration that the lessons of past wars had been learned, refined, and transformed into dominance. And to the watching world, it was a moment the myth of American restraint shattered. The United States had not merely gone to war, it had redefined what war meant. As the lights of Baghdad went out, one message became unmistakable. America was not just fighting, it was demonstrating what unmatched power, intelligence, and unity could achieve. The night sky burned with controlled fury, and somewhere in the darkness, a realization spread among those who witnessed it. The modern age of warfare had begun, and America was its architect. In the darkness over Iraq, the storm intensified. Thousands of miles away, in operations rooms from Washington to Riyadh, officers watched the unfolding assault through flickering screens filled with coded telemetry. Each light represented a weapon in flight, a missile threading through the atmosphere guided by satellites 22,000 miles above Earth. The numbers scrolling across the monitors with a heartbeat of an empire in motion. Coordinates, wind speeds, impact confirmations, all feeding into a single, unified command network that no other nation on Earth possessed. In less than 2 hours, over 400 targets had been struck with precision that defied belief. Baghdad's radar network was gone, its air defense command blinded and deaf. Bridges, bunkers, communication hubs, all the vital arteries of the regime, were being cut with surgical precision, and yet not a single American aircraft had been confirmed lost in those opening hours. For military strategists who had studied the attrition of past wars, it was something beyond comprehension. In the deserts below, soldiers of the U.S. Army's 7th Corps waited in eerie silence. The ground war had not yet begun, but every soldier could see the glow on the horizon. The sky painted orange by the bombardment hundreds of miles to the north. Tank crews leaned against the armor of their M1 Abrams, listening to the distant thunder that rolled across the sand. They knew that above them, the Air Force and Navy were clearing the path they would soon travel. The confidence was absolute, not born from arrogance, but from a knowledge that the most complex military machine in history was working exactly as designed. On board the USS Theodore Roosevelt, sailors watched as Tomahawk cruise missiles launched from the deck one after another, each one a spear of fire disappearing into the night. The missiles flew low over the waves, navigating through enemy radar corridors, turning with mechanical grace toward their assigned coordinates. Inside their hardened shells were guidance computers smaller than a typewriter, yet capable of steering a weapon hundreds of miles with pinpoint accuracy. The roar of their departure shook the ship, and every sailor felt a surge of pride. They were witnessing the future of war. Inside Baghdad, the shock was turning confusion. Government officials tried to reach one another through phone lines that no longer worked. Radio transmitters went silent. In the command bunker beneath the Ministry of Defense, senior officers attempted to issue orders, but the screens before them displayed only static. They had spent months boasting that Iraq possessed the 4th largest army in the world. Now that army was effectively blind, its strength irrelevant against an enemy that fought from beyond the horizon. To the Iraqi soldiers manning anti-aircraft batteries, the night became a blur of sound and fire. They fired blindly into the darkness, their tracer rounds carving orange arcs through the sky, hitting nothing. Above them, American aircraft moved unseen, dropping precision-guided munitions that found those very guns seconds later. The rhythm of the attack was almost mechanical. Strike, confirm, move on. The destruction was not random. It was ordered, mathematical, inevitable. The very concept of defense was being rewritten. American pilots spoke in clipped, calm voices over encrypted channels. Each word was part of a system too vast for any one person to grasp. Tankers refueled bombers in midair. Stealth jets transmitted targeting data to ships hundreds of miles away. Satellites relayed the information to computers in Florida and Virginia. The entire planet had become a single battlefield, connected by American technology. Back home, television viewers watched the first live broadcast of a war in progress. CNN cameras, stationed in a Baghdad hotel, captured the glow of explosions on the horizon. For the first time in history, a war was unfolding in real time before a global audience, and what they saw was not chaos. It was control. The images were surreal, a dark skyline illuminated by precise flashes, each one a surgical strike. Viewers didn't yet understand that every explosion represented months of planning and decades of innovation. The laser-guided bomb, the stealth aircraft, the satellite navigation, all of it was a product of an industrial and scientific network that only America could sustain. When the Pentagon later released footage of bombs hitting exact windows of military buildings, the world realized that something fundamental had changed. Power was no longer measured only by the number of soldiers or tanks, but by the integration of information, science, and discipline. For the American people, it was a moment of vindication after the scars of Vietnam, a demonstration that their nation could fight with precision and principle. To allies across the world, it was reassurance. To adversaries, it was warning. Baghdad's lights were gone, its power grid dismantled, yet the strikes continued with relentless accuracy. Somewhere in the darkness, a pilot whispered to his co-pilot, "They don't even know what hit them." And he was right. The war that began that night would not be remembered for its brutality, but for its precision, the moment when the world understood that America could wage war not through numbers, but through mastery. The storm had only begun to reveal its full fury, and already the shape of global warfare had changed forever. As the bombardment rolled deep into the night, the coalition air armada expanded its reach. Targets that had once been theoretical coordinates on maps now existed only as craters. Command bunkers, radar stations, missile batteries, all meticulously cataloged by American intelligence, were erased in a matter of hours. Yet what made this night so remarkable was not only the devastation, but the precision with which it unfolded. In the heart of the Saudi desert, inside a sprawling tent city known as King Khalid Military City, American commanders observed the operation unfold through data streams pouring in from airborne command posts. Every strike, every aircraft position, every confirmed impact was plotted in real time on glowing screens. The atmosphere was electric but calm. The soldiers and airmen were part of something larger than themselves, a living machine of strategy and coordination that seemed to operate with mechanical perfection. In Washington, the Pentagon's war room mirrored that same glow. Intelligence analysts and officers stood shoulder to shoulder before massive displays, their eyes tracking icons that moved like constellations. The sense of control was total. For decades, the United States had invested in technologies born of Cold War necessity, systems designed to counter a superpower that no longer existed. Now those same technologies were proving decisive in a different kind of war, one waged with information as much as ordnance. The American-led coalition had fused satellites, computers, and precision munitions into a single synchronized network, and the result was what military theorists would later call a revolution in warfare. On the ground in Iraq, the contrast was absolute. Iraqi commanders struggled to communicate through broken lines and disrupted radio frequencies. Entire divisions waited for orders that never came, their chain of command severed by strikes they could not see and could not stop. Even elite Republican Guard units, long feared as the regime's backbone, found themselves isolated and blind. Reports filtered in of destroyed bridges, disabled runways, and highways blocked by the wreckage of convoys caught in the open. What had begun as confidence in their defensive strength now gave way to disbelief. They had prepared for an invasion like those of history. Columns of tanks, artillery barges, brute force. But what they faced was a storm of invisible precision, a calculated dismantling of their ability to resist. Above them, the night sky shimmered with distant flashes, each one another blow against their infrastructure. The sonic booms of jets were followed by the low rumble of detonations that rolled for miles across the desert. Civilians in Baghdad took shelter in basements, listening to the windows rattle and the ground tremble, not knowing which targets were being struck or when it would end. From the rooftops, the horizon glowed with a constant, ghostly light. Yet even amid the destruction, there was a strange discipline to the assault. The coalition's rules of engagement had been crafted with precision equal to the weaponry itself. Military targets were prioritized. Civilian areas were avoided whenever possible. The objective was not annihilation, but incapacitation, to break the regime's ability to wage war while minimizing suffering among its people. This discipline became one of the defining features of the campaign, and a testament to the professionalism of those carrying it out. The effect on morale was immense. American pilots returning to base described the experience as surreal. Missions that once would have required dozens of aircraft and hours of bombardment were now completed in minutes. Targets vanished with mathematical certainty, and the losses were minimal. The technology that had once been theory in classified briefings was now reality before their eyes. Among the air crews there was quiet pride, not in destruction itself, but in mastery. The realization that years of relentless training, engineering, and sacrifice had culminated in this moment of precision. Meanwhile, the coalition's European and Arab partners marveled at the coordination. British Tornadoes, Saudi F-15s, and French Jaguars flew alongside American aircraft in perfect formation, guided by the same command network. The alliance was not symbolic. It was functional, unified, and overwhelming. For the first time in modern history, dozens of nations were fighting as a single organism under an integrated system of leadership and communication. The sense of unity reinforced conviction that this was not just a military operation, but a demonstration of collective resolve against aggression. Back in Baghdad, as dawn began to creep over the horizon, the true extent of the night's assault became visible. Columns of smoke rose from the outskirts of the city, their gray plumes stretching into the pale sky. Roads leading to key installations were cratered, and power substations lay in ruins. The once bustling hum of the capital was replaced by an eerie stillness broken only by the sound of distant sirens. Yet amid that silence, American reconnaissance satellites captured exactly what they were meant to see, the enemy's capability fading hour by hour. By the time the first daylight touched the desert, over 1,000 sorties had been flown. Coalition aircraft had dominated every altitude, from stealth bombers cruising at 50,000 feet to attack helicopters skimming just above the sand. The operation scale defied comparison. Never before had air power been unleashed with such speed, precision, and coordination. It was not only a test of military might, but of logistics, intelligence, and endurance. To maintain such intensity required supply chains that functioned with near-perfect reliability, and they did. Tankers refueled jets in midair, maintenance crews worked tirelessly under floodlights, and communications relays carried orders instantaneously across thousands of miles. Every part of the machine performed exactly as intended, and as the sun rose over the Gulf that morning, one truth had already become undeniable. The world had entered a new era of warfare, and the nation leading it had proven what technology, discipline, and unity could achieve. The storm had not yet ended, but its outcome was already being written in the smoke that rose above the horizon, a message that power in the modern age was no longer defined by size alone, but by precision, intelligence, and the will to act. As the first light of January 17th broke over the desert, the effects of the initial bombardment became painfully clear to the Iraqi military. Their command networks were fractured, radar installations silent, and communication lines severed, leaving units scattered and disoriented. The coalition's air campaign had done more than inflict physical destruction. It shattered the enemy's perception of control. In Riyadh and aboard aircraft carriers in the Gulf, American commanders monitored the cascading failures with meticulous attention to detail. Every strike, every missile impact, every radar blackout was cross-referenced against intelligence gathered for months. Analysts compared post-strike reconnaissance photos to pre-operation schematics, confirming that the operation was achieving its objectives faster and with greater precision than anticipated. It was the realization of a concept developed over decades, to disable an enemy's ability to resist before they could even comprehend the magnitude of the assault. On the ground, coalition forces waited patiently. Armored divisions poised at the border of Kuwait were ready to advance, but they remained stationary. The war planners had emphasized timing and coordination. No ground movement would occur until the air campaign had sufficiently neutralized enemy defenses. Soldiers huddled in the cold desert night, the hum of distant aircraft above providing both a warning and reassurance. Tanks lined up in formation, their sensors scanning the horizon, while artillery units conducted practice calibrations, ready to provide support once the order was given. Behind the lines, logistics teams moved with mechanical efficiency, refueling vehicles, distributing ammunition, and maintaining the equipment that would soon carry the army into action. In Baghdad, the psychological impact of the bombardment was profound. Government officials had anticipated airstrikes, but the scale and accuracy of the operation defied expectation. The city, once thought to be secure behind layers of fortifications, felt exposed and vulnerable. Reports of destroyed command posts and severed communication lines reached the Iraqi leadership in fragments, each one compounding the sense of helplessness. Soldiers in the field, cut off from direction, improvised as best they could, but the precision and speed of coalition strikes left little room for effective resistance. The air campaign was not indiscriminate. It followed a doctrine of calculated incapacitation. Targets were chosen to dismantle the enemy's ability to wage war rather than to destroy, for destruction's sake. Power plants were neutralized, highways cratered, and supply depots eradicated, effectively isolating units and eroding their capacity to respond. Coalition reconnaissance planes flew overhead continuously, capturing imagery and transmitting it to command centers where analysts processed the data in real time. Decisions that would once have required hours of deliberation were now executed in minutes, each action informed by live intelligence and predictive models. This level of integration, of speed and certainty, was unprecedented. Military historians would later describe it as the moment modern warfare truly entered the information age, where knowledge and technology could trump numbers and courage alone. In the Gulf, the Navy executed parallel operations with equal precision. Tomahawk missiles launched from warships thousands of miles from Iraq found their targets with deadly accuracy, guided by satellite data and reconnaissance information. Aircraft carriers coordinated sorties seamlessly, while support vessels ensured supply lines remained uninterrupted. The operation was a showcase of American industrial and technological might, a demonstration that decades of investment in advanced systems could produce decisive results in a theater far from home. Pilots returning from their missions reported seeing entire facilities evaporate under laser-guided bombs, buildings reduced to rubble with the accuracy of a scalpel. The psychological effect on the coalition forces was profound. Confidence was absolute because every plan, every calculation, every technological tool performed exactly as expected. Across the globe, media outlets covered the unfolding assault with a mix of awe and disbelief. Audiences watched footage of explosions lighting up the desert night, of military targets obliterated with surgical precision, and of aircraft returning safely to bases hundreds of miles from the front. For the American public, it was an affirmation of national capability and strategic vision. Analysts on television explained how advanced targeting systems, stealth technology, and integrated command networks had changed the nature of war. For allies, it was a reassurance that coalition forces could operate effectively in concert, projecting power across vast distances while minimizing casualties. And for adversaries, it was a warning. The days when sheer numbers could challenge American military might were over. In the command centers, the focus remained on the coming days. Intelligence assessments indicated which Iraqi units were still capable of resistance and which infrastructure remained functional. Precision strikes would continue to degrade these assets, preparing the battlefield for the ground offensive that would soon follow. The operation was not only about destroying targets, but shaping the psychological landscape, convincing the enemy that resistance was futile before boots even touched the sand. The combination of overwhelming technology, meticulous planning, and disciplined execution was creating a paradigm shift in modern warfare. When the sun rose fully over the desert, the coalition's air armada had already flown hundreds of sorties. Enemy capabilities were diminished, morale shattered, and control lost. The world had witnessed a demonstration of force that was both surgical and overwhelming, an event that would be studied by militaries for decades to come. Yet for those executing the campaign, it was simply the product of planning, skill, and coordination. Each aircraft, each missile, each strike was part of a living system, a machine in which every component performed its function with precision. And as the city of Baghdad lay in partial darkness, its defenders bewildered, one truth was indisputable. The storm had begun, and it would not relent. America had proven that modern warfare was no longer about numbers or brute force alone. It was about integration, precision, and the ability to act decisively across all domains simultaneously. As the air campaign entered its second day, the scale of coordination became almost unimaginable. Hundreds of aircraft now crisscrossed Iraqi airspace in a continuous, overlapping pattern, each flight path calculated to avoid detection, to maximize efficiency, and to neutralize threats before they could respond. Stealth fighters glided silently above the deserts, invisible to radar and undetectable until their ordnance struck with devastating accuracy. Tomahawk missiles launched from ships in the Persian Gulf and Red Sea travel hundreds of miles, guided by satellite navigation systems and real-time intelligence, eliminating key command centers, airfields, and infrastructure. Each explosion, each flash of fire against the pre-dawn darkness, was a physical manifestation of years of preparation, investment, and technological innovation. Inside coalition command centers, the operation unfolded like a living map. Analysts tracked every target, every sortie, every strike in real time, updating predictions and allocating resources with near-perfect efficiency. Intelligence from satellite reconnaissance, AWACS aircraft, and unmanned surveillance platforms flowed into a central system where algorithms and humans worked in tandem to anticipate enemy movements and vulnerabilities. The result was a level of situational awareness that left Iraqi commanders completely blind to the scope and precision of the assault. On the ground, American and coalition forces waited patiently. Tanks lined in formation, artillery crews poised, infantry units prepared to advance. But the ground offensive would not begin until the air campaign had thoroughly neutralized Iraqi capabilities. The purpose was clear: to minimize casualties and to ensure overwhelming advantage from the very first hour of ground contact. Iraqi soldiers, many of whom had expected to fight in conventional engagements, found themselves stranded, disoriented, and cut off from their commanders. Communication lines had been destroyed, supply depots eradicated, and key military nodes obliterated. Even elite Republican Guard units, trained for rapid response, struggled to coordinate their movements. Those who tried to fire at American aircraft found their guns and missile systems destroyed before they could react. In Baghdad, government officials attempted to maintain order, but the magnitude of the destruction and the speed of the American strikes created confusion and fear. The city's infrastructure faltered under the weight of precision strikes. Electricity failed, and transportation grids collapsed. Civilians were thrown into darkness, unaware of the technological mastery guiding the attacks above them, yet instinctively recognizing the futility of resistance. From the perspective of coalition forces, the operation was a textbook example of integrated warfare. Air Force pilots described it as surreal, witnessing targets vaporized with surgical accuracy while experiencing virtually no opposition. Navy personnel launched Tomahawks with calm precision, each missile finding its assigned location with mathematical certainty. Soldiers on the ground prepared for the invasion they knew would come, but watched as the air campaign dismantled enemy resistance without a single coalition life lost. The logistical operation supporting this campaign was equally remarkable. Supply lines stretching thousands of miles ensured that fuel, ammunition, and maintenance reached the front lines without delay. Tankers refueled jets midair, mobile command centers transmitted real-time intelligence, and repair crews worked tirelessly under harsh conditions to maintain the relentless tempo of operations. Every component of the system was interdependent, a demonstration of planning, discipline, and technological integration that created a military capability without precedent. Civilians and journalists observing the strikes were awestruck by the coordination. Explosions lit up the night sky, buildings crumbled with unerring accuracy, and communications lines went dead before Iraqi forces could respond. Analysts on television explained the sophistication behind every strike, from laser-guided bombs to stealth technology, and the world began to understand that the nature of war had fundamentally changed. For coalition forces, the psychological impact was profound. They were witnessing the culmination of training, technology, and strategy, experiencing the satisfaction of seeing plans executed with near-perfect precision. Confidence grew not from brute force, but from mastery of information, skill, and discipline. By mid-morning, reconnaissance flights revealed a landscape utterly transformed. Key military facilities were destroyed, airfields rendered unusable, and communication hubs silenced. Roads were cratered, bridges gone, and entire neighborhoods of strategic value reduced to rubble. The Iraqi military was functionally paralyzed, unable to coordinate even basic defensive measures. Meanwhile, coalition leadership monitored the data feeds from every sensor, camera, and aircraft. Analysts compared pre-operation intelligence to the live feedback, confirming that the mission objectives were not only met but exceeded. The integration of technology, planning, and human execution had produced a level of precision and effectiveness never before seen in warfare. Soldiers in the desert could feel the effects even without direct involvement. The night's bombardment had removed any doubt that the ground campaign would proceed with overwhelming advantage. Commanders briefed units on the next phase, emphasizing that the enemy's capacity to resist was crumbling and that the combination of air superiority, technological dominance, and logistical efficiency ensured minimal coalition casualties. As the sun climbed higher over the desert, the transformation of the battlefield became undeniable. The Iraqi military, once considered formidable, was now reduced to fragmented units, with no coherent command structure. The coalition's integrated approach had achieved a decisive psychological and strategic impact, making resistance appear futile. And for the world observing from afar, the opening days of Operation Desert Storm became a demonstration of what modern warfare had become. Not a contest of sheer numbers, but a display of coordination, precision, and technological mastery on a scale never before witnessed. The storm had not yet ended, but the writing was already on the sands of Iraq. American power, exercised with skill, discipline, and innovation, had reshaped the battlefield, defined the terms of engagement, and set the stage for an overwhelming conclusion. As the first full day of the air campaign drew to a close, the effects of precision warfare were impossible to ignore. Baghdad and surrounding areas were littered with destroyed command centers, shattered radar arrays, and demolished communication networks. The Iraqi military, long touted as one of the most disciplined forces in the region, now struggled to coordinate even basic defensive maneuvers. Coalition intelligence, fed by satellite reconnaissance, AWACS surveillance, and ground reports, painted a picture of total operational collapse. In Riyadh, U.S. Central Command monitored the unfolding chaos with mixture relief and calculated focus. The data coming in was immediate and absolute. Every strike confirmed, every target neutralized, every remaining defensive position identified. From aircraft carriers in the Gulf to command posts in the desert, personnel operated with synchronized precision, the entire coalition functioning as a single, well-oiled machine. Pilots returning from night sorties described landscapes transformed almost beyond recognition. Facilities that had once been hubs of military planning were reduced to rubble, vehicles and artillery destroyed before they could be deployed, and key supply lines severed. The speed and accuracy of these strikes left Iraqi commanders scrambling, issuing contradictory orders that could not be implemented. Soldiers in the field found themselves isolated, without guidance, and faced with a reality they had not anticipated. The enemy was everywhere and nowhere at once, striking with uncanny precision while remaining invisible. On the coalition side, the psychological advantage was palpable. Ground troops, armored divisions poised at the border of Kuwait, and infantry units preparing to advance were reassured by the overwhelming success of the air campaign. Confidence was rooted not in luck, but in meticulous planning, coordination, and technological superiority. Tanks and artillery units conducted final calibrations, knowing the battlefield had already been softened by the relentless precision strikes from above. Commanders emphasized patience. The ground war would begin only after the enemy had been sufficiently weakened. Meanwhile, the Navy launched continued missile strikes from ships stationed across the Persian Gulf, each Tomahawk traveling hundreds of miles with pinpoint accuracy. Stealth aircraft executed low-altitude ingress missions, striking air defense systems before the enemy could react. Each operation was choreographed down to the minute, a testament to training, discipline, and the integration of intelligence and technology. The logistical operation supporting the campaign was equally impressive. Supply lines stretching thousands of miles delivered fuel, ammunition, and maintenance support without interruption. Tankers refueled aircraft midair, mobile repair units worked tirelessly under floodlights, and forward-deployed command posts processed real-time data to adjust targets and coordinate missions. Every element, from pilot to analyst, performed its functions seamlessly, ensuring that the operation maintained its relentless pace without faltering. Back in Baghdad, Iraqi leadership faced a rapidly deteriorating situation. Key facilities were destroyed, power grids failed, and transportation routes were disrupted, leaving units stranded and disoriented. The psychological impact of precision strikes was compounded by the speed with which they were carried out. Orders were either delayed or impossible to execute, and confusion reigned as commanders struggled to understand the scope of the assault. Civilians, witnessing explosions in the distance and the sudden collapse of infrastructure, were caught in a landscape that felt both terrifying and incomprehensible. The sheer coordination of the coalition forces created a sense of inevitability. Soldiers and civilians alike recognized that resistance was futile, that the air campaign was not a matter of chance, but the product of overwhelming planning and technological mastery. Intelligence analysts within the coalition used real-time data to anticipate remaining pockets of resistance and plan subsequent strikes. The destruction of command and control networks ensured that Iraqi forces could not regroup, while continuous surveillance confirmed the success of every mission. The operational tempo was unrelenting. Every hour, new strikes eliminated remaining threats. Every sortie reinforced the psychological pressure on enemy troops, and every success informed the next move. In the desert, ground forces prepared for the invasion that would follow, reassured by the fact that the battlefield had already been softened beyond repair. The integration of air power, intelligence, and logistics had created a force multiplier unlike any seen before. The coalition strikes demonstrated that modern warfare was no longer solely about numbers, armor, or brute force. It was about coordination, precision, and the ability to leverage technology to achieve strategic dominance. By the end of the day, hundreds of sorties had been flown, thousands of targets engaged, and the Iraqi military reduced to a fragmented and reactive force. Commanders reviewed reconnaissance imagery and reports, noting the unparalleled efficiency of the strikes and confirming that the battlefield was now under coalition control even before the first ground forces advanced. The psychological effect on both the coalition and the enemy was decisive. Confidence surged among U.S. and allied forces, while fear, disorientation, and paralysis gripped the Iraqi ranks. Observers across the world began to understand that this was a new era of warfare, one in which information, technology, and precision could achieve what brute force alone could not. The initial hours of Operation Desert Storm had already rewritten the rules of modern conflict. Air dominance, meticulous planning, and technological integration had created a decisive advantage that ensured that when the ground war commenced, it would do so on terms defined entirely by the coalition. The storm had not yet concluded, but its trajectory was clear. American strategy, power, and innovation had reshaped the battlefield in ways that would be studied, analyzed, and remembered for generations. The world had witnessed a demonstration not only of firepower but of mastery. The moment when capability, preparation, and precision combined to define the future of warfare. As the second and third days of the air campaign unfolded, the cumulative effect of Operation Desert Storm became undeniable. Iraqi military infrastructure, once assumed to be robust and resilient, had been systematically dismantled. Airfields lay in ruins, with runways cratered and aircraft destroyed on the ground before they could take flight. Radar stations were silent, command centers obliterated, and supply depots decimated. The Republican Guard, the regime's elite force, found itself scattered and incapable of coordinated response. On the coalition side, the air campaign continued with relentless precision. Pilots flew multiple sorties per night, navigating hostile skies with confidence, guided by state-of-the-art navigation systems, intelligence feeds, and AWACS coordination. Each strike was carefully calculated to achieve maximum effect, avoiding unnecessary civilian casualties, while neutralizing strategic military targets. Tomahawk missiles, launched from ships hundreds of miles away, traveled unerringly to their targets, guided by satellite intelligence and pre-programmed trajectories that ensured pinpoint accuracy. Stealth aircraft infiltrated dense air defense networks undetected, striking anti-aircraft sites before Iraqi units could react. The psychological impact on the Iraqi military was profound. Soldiers in the field were isolated, often unaware of the full scope of the destruction, receiving fragmented and contradictory orders from commanders who themselves were cut off from communications. Entire units found themselves stranded, their supply lines destroyed, and their command structures obliterated. The sense of inevitability that coalition strategists had sought was now a reality. Iraqi forces could not respond effectively, and any attempt at organized resistance was rapidly neutralized. Within coalition command centers, the pace of operations remained dizzying. Analysts processed streams of intelligence in real time, updating target lists, tracking strike outcomes, and adjusting priorities with surgical efficiency. The integration of intelligence, logistics, and operational execution reached a level that military theorists would later recognize as revolutionary. Ground commanders, waiting on the border of Kuwait, prepared to advance with the knowledge that the battlefield had already been reshaped. Tanks and artillery units conducted final calibrations. Infantry reviewed plans, and logistics teams ensured that fuel, ammunition, and supplies were positioned for the rapid movement that would follow. Every aspect of the operation was synchronized to maximize the advantage of the coalition's overwhelming precision and technological superiority. In Baghdad, the regime attempted to maintain a semblance of control, but the effects of the air campaign were impossible to conceal. Key infrastructure was destroyed, transportation networks disrupted, and electricity intermittent. Civilians, caught between the destruction and fear of reprisals, moved cautiously through the city, observing the effects of an air campaign they barely comprehended. Military and government officials struggled to maintain cohesion, but the scale and precision of coalition strikes rendered effective response impossible. The coordination of multiple coalition forces from around the world further reinforced the psychological and operational pressure on Iraqi leadership. British Tornadoes, French Jaguars, Saudi F-15s, and American fighters operated seamlessly, guided by integrated intelligence networks and centralized command. The coalition's ability to function as a single organism, capable of executing complex operations across multiple domains simultaneously, created a level of pressure that no conventional military force could withstand. Logistics played a crucial role in sustaining this relentless tempo. Aircraft were refueled midair by tankers operating in hostile conditions. Maintenance crews repaired and redeployed damaged aircraft rapidly, and forward-deployed command centers ensured continuous situational awareness. Every resource was maximized to maintain operational momentum, creating a cycle of relentless precision strikes that left Iraqi forces reactive and incapable of coordinated defense. By the end of the third day, reconnaissance imagery confirmed the full scope of the campaign's success. Entire military installations were destroyed, highways cratered, bridges demolished, and command nodes eliminated. Enemy forces were fragmented, their ability to coordinate effectively reduced to near zero. Coalition forces had not only achieved air dominance, but had reshaped the operational landscape in preparation for a ground offensive that would encounter minimal organized resistance. The human dimension of the campaign was equally significant. Pilots, ground crews, and analysts experienced a level of confidence born from meticulous preparation and flawless execution. Each strike, each flight, each intelligence report reinforced the sense that victory was not only possible but inevitable. The psychological advantage extended to soldiers waiting in the desert, ready to advance, knowing that the battlefield had already been won through precision, coordination, and technological mastery. Across the world, the opening days of Operation Desert Storm became a demonstration of what modern military capability could achieve. Media coverage highlighted the sophistication of precision strikes, the integration of multinational forces, and the ability of technology to change the rules of engagement. Military analysts emphasized the significance of information dominance, real-time intelligence, and precision ordnance in shaping the outcome of the conflict. The coalition's actions had redefined warfare for a new era, demonstrating that strategic planning, technological innovation, and disciplined execution could achieve decisive results with minimal coalition casualties. As the fourth day approached, the groundwork for the ground offensive was complete. The Iraqi military had been degraded to the point where coordinated resistance was virtually impossible. Coalition forces had demonstrated not only overwhelming firepower, but the ability to integrate intelligence, technology, and human skill into a single operational machine. The world had witnessed a new standard in modern warfare, a conflict defined not by mass forces alone, but by the precision, coordination, and innovation of those capable of wielding it effectively. With the battlefield meticulously prepared by relentless air strikes, the coalition's ground offensive commenced in the early hours of February 24th. 1991. The troops moved with unprecedented confidence, a reflection of the precision and effectiveness of the preceding air campaign. Tanks rolled across the Kuwaiti desert with logistical support that could sustain continuous movement. Artillery units provided calculated fire suppression, and infantry advanced with the knowledge that Iraqi forces were disorganized and largely incapable of coordinated resistance. The psychological impact of the air campaign was evident as Republican Guard units, once considered elite, retreated or surrendered in the face of force they could neither see nor effectively counter. Command structures have been shattered, communication lines destroyed, and supply depots eradicated. Any attempt at organized defense collapsed under combined pressure precision strikes and rapid ground maneuver. Coalition forces, operating with seamless integration, advanced at speeds that stunned military observers worldwide. Helicopter provided reconnaissance and close air support. Drones monitored the battlefield in real time, and command units coordinated movements with near-instantaneous communication. Every action reinforced the advantage already gained through aerial dominance, leaving Iraqi forces unable to adapt or mount effective counterattacks. The terrain itself, once thought to favor defenders, now offered no advantage. Cratered highways, demolished bridges, and neutralized artillery positions ensured that coalition units could maneuver with minimal interference. Soldiers reported that the psychological momentum was overwhelming. The enemy's will to resist had been systematically eroded, leaving disoriented units retreating under the pressure of force that combined technological superiority, disciplined training, and relentless execution. On the strategic level, the operation exemplified the culmination of decades of American military innovation. The integration of precision munitions, advanced surveillance, stealth capabilities, and logistics had created a combat system that multiplied effectiveness far beyond the sum of its parts. Commanders at every echelon understood that success was not simply the result of superior firepower, but careful orchestration, planning, and mastery of information. Iraqi leadership, meanwhile, experienced complete operational paralysis. Efforts to regroup or counterattack were thwarted not only by destruction but by anticipation. Coalition forces had predicted movements, neutralized key units, and created a perception of omnipresence. The psychological effect was decisive. Surrender and retreat became the only rational options for Iraqi commanders attempting to preserve what remained of their forces. Throughout the Gulf, coalition logistics ensured that the tempo of operations could be maintained indefinitely. Fuel, ammunition, and supplies reached the front lines without interruption. Repair teams restored damaged vehicles quickly, and medical units treated casualties with efficiency that contrasted starkly with the haphazard state of Iraqi support systems. Every component worked in harmony, demonstrating the power of disciplined planning and technological integration in modern warfare. The speed of the ground offensive, combined with the preceding devastation wrought by air power, left Baghdad increasingly isolated. Units once capable of defending the capital were disorganized, supply lines cut, and morale shattered. Coalition intelligence continued to provide updates in real time, guiding forces to exploit weaknesses, avoid ambushes, and neutralize pockets of resistance. Civilians, trapped in the chaos, witnessed the overwhelming might of coalition forces, the precision of airstrikes, and a coordinated advance of ground troops, all without the massive casualties or destruction that had characterized conflicts of earlier eras. By the fourth day of the ground offensive, the outcome was all but inevitable. Iraqi forces were in full retreat, surrendering by the thousands, and coalition units advanced into strategic positions with minimal resistance. Commanders reported near-perfect execution of plans, the culmination of meticulous preparation, technological superiority, and disciplined execution that left no space for improvisation by the enemy. Across the world, the success of Operation Desert Storm was analyzed and celebrated as a demonstration of American capability. News footage depicted advanced aircraft returning safely, tanks maneuvering effortlessly across the desert, and soldiers coordinating with precision, all against a backdrop of disintegrating Iraqi defense. Military analysts emphasized the transformative nature of the campaign. The integration of air power, ground mobility, intelligence, and technology had produced a decisive result with minimal coalition casualties, redefining the principles of modern warfare. For the soldiers, pilots, and commanders involved, the operation was a testament to years of training, investment, and strategic vision. Every missile, every sortie, every maneuver had contributed to a coordinated effort that left nothing to chance. The battlefield had been reshaped not through attrition alone, but through the application of knowledge, skill, and technological superiority in a manner that ensured overwhelming advantage. By the conclusion of the campaign, Iraqi forces were effectively neutralized, Kuwait liberated, and coalition objectives achieved with unprecedented efficiency. Historians and military scholars would later describe Operation Desert Storm as an embodiment of modern warfare, precise, integrated, and decisively executed. It was a demonstration of American innovation, capability, and strategic foresight, a campaign that projected power across continents and oceans, achieving victory not only through firepower, but through mastery of the complex interplay between technology, intelligence, and human skill. The lessons of the operation reverberated throughout military academies and command centers worldwide. Warfare had entered a new era, one in which